Hello, everyone, and welcome to this first graduation ceremony of the EDJNet Data Journalism Training Program. So the program is in its second edition now, and it began in September, and will finish in July. So today we have a first graduation event for this first round of students who have successfully completed the program so far, and they have also completed the final project, which is what they will present today. I put up a list of the students that will speak today, and we will follow more or less this order. So I will let you know when it's your turn. They're basically just in a democratic alphabetical order. But before I leave the floor to the students, we have a short introduction by Ornaldo from the European Data Journalism Network for a brief introduction. So Ornaldo, I leave the floor to you.
Thank you, Alice. Hi, everybody, and thank you for having me. I will steal just a very few minutes to the presentation because I'm actually very interested to hear them as well. And I will just briefly introduce the European Data Journalism Network, which is, let's say, the framework within which this training has been activated. So I hope you can see my screen. Can you see my screen? Because I am unable to share now. Of course, it worked during the test that we did, but now it's not working anymore.
No, I cannot see it actually. Does it give you an error?
We can do without, so let's not steal too much time with these technical issues.
If you want, I can share it for you if you want to send me a link.
Oh, no, it's fine, it's fine. It was actually just a couple of slides. So to start with, EDJNet, the European Data Journalism Network, is a network funded by the European Union now back in 2017. So we've been running for a few years now. We consist of a network of 33 different members in 22 European countries. So we cover most of the European Union plus Serbia from last year. And in brief, EDJNet aims to be a collaborative community that brings together people from journalism, data analysts, designers, and developers from all over Europe to create collaboratively media products. But besides that, EDJNet is also a news aggregator in a sense that it publishes the content for free in several languages in its website, so that it's possible to keep track of all the work that has been produced by the EDJNet community and in general to see the collaborative investigation, which is what we've been focusing on in the last few years, which is 4, 5, 6 newsroom coming together to work on a single topic, writing a European-wide story that can be interesting for many different publics, as well as national stories with, let's say, a frame that appeals more to the country in which the EDJNet member operates. We also became, through the years, a source of data or different tools or resources freely provided to journalists in order to facilitate the production of data journalism and in general to ease the skill gap that it is still present in the industry when it comes to, let's say, the analytical skill that might be needed in order to produce data journalism, especially if the complexity of the data increases. And last but not least, we are also a learning hub that tries to actively promote data literacy. And let's say that in this last pillar of EDJNet, it's where the data journalist training program took form with the aim to bring together an international online class of students that are willing to improve their skills in data analysis or in general that would like to learn what are the techniques and the skills that are needed in order to produce stories and tell stories with data. And for, let's say, this endeavor, of course, Dataninja, which is a member of EDJNet, is our leading partner of this training program, and has been doing now, as you said, for the second year, this training that I think has been quite successful, or at least it was for us last year, and I think that this year is only going to be better because of all the things that we learned through doing these trainings. And yeah, which is something that we really care a lot about, and we would like to develop even further. So yeah, this is very in brief what EDJNet is, what we do, and how this training is contextualized within our framework.
Okay, so we can thank you, Arnaldo. And so let's begin with the presentations from the students. So again, just going in an alphabetical order, I'm going to call on Valentina Alberti to begin showcasing her work.
Okay, I think you can see my screen.
Yes, perfect.
Hello, everyone. I'm Valentina Alberti, and today I will take you on a sort of journey through the diverse landscapes of European cities. Before we dive in, let me share a bit about myself. I have a background in regional and urban planning, and I spent my career delving into the challenges and opportunity facing European cities and regions. And along the way, I've discovered the power of visual communication in making complex topics accessible to all. In line with my passions, my work focuses on cities and people, maybe better say migrations and dreams. I've explored the realities faced by people moving from one country to another in search of opportunities. And the question that guided my exploration was, what do migrants find once they arrive in a new European city? I used institutional data from Eurostat to identify the most diverse cities in Europe and to describe some of their characteristics. In this work, diversity refers to the proportion of people living in a city who are not from the same country. What did I find? In European cities that in this chart are represented by blue dots, on average, more than 1 inhabitant in 10 come from a foreign country, but the level of diversity varies greatly. For instance, Narva, that is on the Estonian border with Russia, is the most diverse city in European Union. 50% of its population is not Estonian. Cayenne in French Guyana and Torrevieja on the Mediterranean coast of Spain follow with 41% of foreigners. On the flip side, the less diverse cities, those having less than 1% of population represented by foreigners, are 3 in Lithuania, 1 in Croatia, and 1 in Hungary. Overall, in 20 cities out of the 532 I analyzed, more than 25% of population is represented by foreigners. And for these 20 cities, I have analyzed some key indicators to explore people's life there, such as unemployment rate, median population age, and the number of accommodation per inhabitant that is describing more or less the touristic infrastructure of these places. The gray squares on the left side show the national average for these indicators, while the blue squares describe cities and compare values with the country average, that is the gray line that you can see. Now, going back to the initial questions, that is, once reached their new city, what foreigners find there, data highlights some clear difficulties in integration for respectively aged people in Narva, Estonia, and young people in Cayenne. They find a much more relaxed environment in Spanish and German cities, where the expat communities seem to have more opportunities. Further, the overdeveloped touristic infrastructure that we can see on the bottom line in Spanish cities suggests that pleasant environment can be considered as one of the reasons people move there. Well, this visualization offers just a snapshot of diversity of European cities, but I think that helps to shed some light on interesting stories of people living in these cities. Well, thank you for your attention, and I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, Valentina, for your project. And I was just curious if you wanted to share what tools did you use to create the data visualizations in the end?
Yeah, I started to do some sketch simply with Excel, and then I did all the graphics that you see with Illustrator, basically.
Perfect, thanks. Sorry, I muted myself accidentally. Yeah. Moving on to the second student, we have Marina Caporlingua.
Yes, I'm here.
Share the screen.
Okay, I share my screen. Oops, sorry. Can you see the presentation?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So, hi everyone, and thank you to EDJNet and Dataninja for the opportunity to be here today. I'm Marina Caporlingua, and I work at Il Sole 24 Ore, which is an Italian tech media company. Today, I'll be sharing with you some insight into Italy's anti-COVID vaccination efforts in the aftermath of the pandemic. First of all, a brief introduction to the scenario. In May 2023, the World Health Organization announced the end of the COVID-19 pandemic, and this allowed us to move beyond the restriction that had shaped our lives in the last years. Yet the virus persists, circulating in a milder form, with winter emerging as a pivotal time for its spread. In response, last autumn, the Italian Ministry of Health launched a campaign to promote vaccination, focusing on protecting the most vulnerable people. So we can delve into the outcome and implication of this initiative. My analysis is based on open source data from the Department of Civil Protection and the National Institute of Statistics, respectively, for vaccination and population figures. I've dissected this data across various dimensions, including the total number of vaccination, the age demographics, and the regional distribution. In scrutinizing this data, I encountered a largely clear and well-organized dataset ready for machine reading, which required a minimal adjustment on my part. However, it's worth noting the transition in the richness and frequency of vaccination data updates. In fact, during the peak of the pandemic, daily updates were provided and with a lot of details. Instead, in this seasonal campaign, just weekly updates were provided and with a lower level of detail. And this changes inevitably pose certain limitation to any kind of analysis. By the end of January 2024, that is when I collected the data, Italy had managed to administer a total of over 2 million vaccine. That is a modest result compared to the figures achieved during the pandemic. A closer look reveals that 1.8 million of these doses were administered to the campaign's primary target, the over 60 population. Yet, when we consider this in the context of the entire population, the entire Italian population, it becomes evident that less than 10% of those eligible have been vaccinated, underscoring a significant challenge in reaching this vulnerable group. Notably, I can add that it's only in the recent weeks, so after when I collected the data, that we've seen this figure inch slightly past the 10% mark. Analyzing daily vaccination trends depicted in this line chart via a 7 days rolling average shows an upward trajectory beginning in October 2023 with a peak in December. And this surge likely correlates with the holiday season, a time of increased social interaction, which could underscore the public's response to heightened risk. However, the post-December period reveals a significant drop, signaling a complex interplay of motivation and possible vaccine hesitancy among the populace. In the end, this couplet map brings to light stark regional disparities in vaccination rate, with all regions falling below a 20% vaccination rate for those over 60. And even looking at the more recent data, I can tell you that this threshold has not been yet exceeded by any region. And this visualization also highlights the effort of some regions over others. Monitoring this data also in the following weeks, I can say the disparity between the highest and the lowest vaccinating regions remained unchanged in the weeks to come. So in conclusion, my examination reveals a landscape of both achievements and challenges. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you very much, Marina. So I have the same question for you, even if it was partly written also in the slides. So what tools did you use to analyze and to visualize the data?
I use Google Sheet for analyzing the data and Data Wrapper to produce the charts. Because usually, being a developer, I use other tools and especially programming languages. So for me, it has been an occasion to learn something new.
Yeah, they're probably, I don't know, maybe quicker to use rather than having to program everything from scratch, the visualization. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much again, Marina. And now I would like to invite Michela Finizio to show her work.
Okay, hi everyone.
Hello.
Okay, you can see the screen? Okay, wonderful. Hi to everyone, and thank you to Dataninja for the opportunity. I'm very happy to be here, and my data project focuses on youth crime. And I started from a question that I asked to myself as a journalist in Sole 24 Ore, because I would like to know if it is a real emergency or not. And because here in Italy, we had a lot of news had titles and topics on that, because government is increasing the intervention on these topics. So I would like to know if it is or not a real emergency. And in some way, I tried to see it with the data. So before we getting into the project, I introduce myself. I'm trying to share the
We can't hear you.
Yeah, you're muted.
Do you see I changed the slide or not?
Yeah, you're in the slide with your bio.
Wonderful. Okay, so because I'm trying to check if I'm doing well. So yeah. I'm an editor at Sole 24 Ore, and I work in the Monday edition focus on economic topics, and I take care about the survey of Qualità della Vita, which is a ranking that is going out every year in December on the most livable cities and sub-districts in Italy. And so let's go to the pitch, because it's not something interesting in my life. So I would like to show you the topics, but I don't know how to move it. Okay, so here in Italy, there are a lot of media attention on this stuff of youth crime, because a lot of newspaper headlines, I told you before, on episodes of youth crime were published in the first four months of 2022. So I would love to answer three questions. Does the growing media attention reflect a real social emergency in European cities or not? Is it a really growing up phenomenon or not? And the pandemic has turned on a lot of distress about children and deviance problem, but as the pandemic increased even the delinquency by young people. And the last questions is about the greater interventionism about police and even government, because here in Italy, the Italian government approved in November 2023 a decree, new rules more restrictive on this issue. So we would like to know if these new, more restrictive rules respond to a real ongoing emergency or not. So we collected data about this phenomenon, tried to respond to these three topics. You can see here more details on the news media attention on these topics, and even there are a lot of several studies published on how pandemic changed the daily lives of children and their well-being. So we would like to focus on that, because bullyism, use of drug, violence, and a lot of deviance are growing up in this particular age. So we would like to investigate much more. We collected data from Eurostat. We founded a data set in particular on suspects and offenders by age, from 2015 to 2021 by age, and we investigated, but we should have more information from national statistical institutes, because should be nice to have more updated data on this fact, because we are investigating the pandemic effects. So we would like to collect more recent data, and we should be nice or interesting to find any correlation even with the other socioeconomics indicators. So we are going in depth maybe in the future on that data project. We were able to analyze the trend in the number of minors suspected of having committed the crime in 24 European countries. And we found that the numbers of minors reported to the police decreased by 6% compared to the same historical series by adults suspected. But in 7 of these 24 countries, this issue is increasing, and even in Spain and in Greece. You can see the map here with data wrapper. The highest values of suspected minors per 1,000 inhabitants is in Luxembourg and the lowest in Cyprus. And the incidence of suspected minors on the total number of suspected people is higher in France. But I think the much more interesting dashboard is this one about minors suspected till the last year, 2022. We could integrate the Eurostat data with the National Statistic Institutes only for Germany, Italy, Spain, and Greece. And for Italy, for example, we found that the data relating to minors suspected reported in 2022 to the police is down 3% compared to the 2015. But clearly it is growing, the data is growing compared to the pre-pandemic periods. So you can see the trend is growing up in these countries in the last years. So I hope to go on this investigation in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Michela. I think this is a very interesting topic. I read on the news, I think yesterday, or like I thought of you because I read on the news that in Italy they reached a number of like I think 500 minors in jail, which is the highest number ever recorded. So I was reading the news and I was thinking of your data pitch. I think it certainly makes sense to update it with more recent numbers. And I see you also use Data Wrapper, right, for the visualizations.
Yes, I use it, and we use a lot of tools, but I think sometimes the simple one, Data Wrapper, is the best.
No, I agree. It's very efficient and quick. Okay, thank you, Michela. I would like now to call Alice Gabrieli to present her work.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you all. I share. Okay, I put it in presentation. Okay, can you see it? Okay, so I talk about the relationship between income and mental illness, in particular chronic depression, given that, as I wrote here, the poorer you are, the more mental illness you suffer. I'm Alice Gabrieli. I have a statistical background because I've studied statistical sciences, and now I work as data analyst in the agency of the Italian Chambers of Commerce system. I have some experience abroad, and I discovered the world of data journalism. So I created a project. It's a word pun because it's called Data Journalist, so between data journalism and my name. And this is because I wanted to use my background in statistics and data to use data to divulgate and make information. And my favorite topics are health, disequalities, and environment. And it's for this I choose to talk about health and disequalities, in particular about the mental illnesses. And this is because there are lots of research in the last period that demonstrates that mental illnesses are increasing in Western countries, above all after COVID-19. And it's difficult for many countries to face this situation and to assure adequate health support to everybody. And according to recent research, there is a causal relationship between poverty and mental illnesses. For example, we know that 7 in 100 Europeans suffer chronic depression. We know that this percentage is increasing as income decreases, and most European countries are not implementing the right policies to manage this issue. I took the data from the Statistical Office of European Union, Eurostat, and in particular, I use these variables that are the percentage of persons reporting chronic depression by age, by sex, by age, by income, and by country. In particular, for the income, we have the quantile income, so different classes of income. And this data come from the European Health Interview Survey, that it's a survey where are present some socio-demographic characteristics of the population and also all the variables about the health determinants, healthcare. And to do the analysis, I selected these variables and I divided the information by sex, age, and income. And I did the charts and I created a regression model with standardized data to see if this relationship was positive or negative. And in particular, these are some highlights. We know that in Europe, as income decreases, the frequency of chronic depression increases. And this is a common trend in lots of European countries. For example, the first one is Finland, where we have the largest gap between the lowest and the highest income quantile. And we know also that regarding the lowest income quantile, around 10%, this is the median, around 10% of people suffer chronic depression against 4% in the highest income quantile. And this correlation between poverty, that is measured through the income quantile, and the frequency of chronic depression is equal to minus 0.59. It means that for every 1 point percentage of income quantile that increase, the chronic depression is decrease in minus 0.59. I show you the figure because I know maybe this is particular statistic issue. So here I represented all the European countries of the analysis, and this is ordered by the gap between the percentage of chronic depression between the fifth quantile, that is the richest class, and the first quantile, that is the poorest class. So as I was saying before, in Finland, this gap is the largest. But as we can see, this gap is visible for the majority of the European countries. We only have some exceptions in these countries, but the mean is that we have this 4% of chronic depression diagnosis in the richest class, and it's around 10%, and it's also very, very high in some countries between the poorest class. In this, I was also curious to see if this was if there were differences between the different areas of Europe. So I was seeing if this trend was the same in the different areas. So I represented, for example, Estonia, France, Portugal, and Sweden, because I wanted to represent like a representative country of each area. So Western Europe, Continental Europe, Southern Mediterranean Europe, and Northern Scandinavian Europe. And as you can see, this is a trend that is the same for every area. We only have this exception in, for example, in Portugal, because the largest percentage of chronic depression is present in the second quantile, so not the poorest at all, but the second one. But as you can see, this trend is the same as we were saying before. So as the poverty increase, so we go to this quantile that are the poorest, the chronic depression increases. And I wanted to show this because it's demonstrated, and we can see it through this data, that many European citizens around all the European countries are facing a form of inequality. And it's important to be aware of this to make the real policy changement and to find a solution to help people. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. I found it super interesting. I usually don't agree with the phrase, a chart that says more than 1,000 words, but I have to say the chart about the relationship between poverty and income was really, it didn't need a few words. One of the few cases, I think, when I see something like that. So thank you very much for your presentation. I now have Celeste Gonano.
Yes, I'll share my screen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, EDJNet and Data Journalism, for organizing the Data Journalism Training Program. My name is Celeste Gonano, and for my final data pitch, I decided to analyze the relationship between Europe and the use of liquefied natural gas. A little bit about me. I am a freelance journalist. Sorry, I seem to, okay. I am a freelance journalist interested in investigative journalism, energy issues, and climate change, and I have a background in journalism and international relations. In recent years, the shifting towards a greener energy has taken up a lot of space in the public debate, both at European level and a national level. And when I'm thinking about national level, I'm thinking about Italy because it's where I come from. But the war in Ukraine has changed European energy strategy, hindering the possibility of a greener future, since many of the decisions that have been taken regarding energy issues have been relying on fossil fuels. For this data pitch, I use the data from the European Gas Tracker project, and I mainly focused on LNG terminals, specifically the operating LNG terminals in Europe and their capacity, the proposed and the in construction ones, and the country who decided to build new LNG terminals. What I found is that in 2022, Europe is currently building 53 new LNG terminals, 10 of which are already in construction, while 33 are listed as proposed. So we are planning to do it. And Germany is the European country with the highest number of in construction and proposed LNG terminals. How is the distribution between in gas supplying in Europe? According to the International Energy Agency, in Europe, 86% of gas arrives to pipeline, while the 13% arrives to LNG. And for this reason, I think that the choice of building new LNG terminals is significant, because while pipelines connects directly to countries, so the supplier country with the buyer country, LNG allows to choose gas from different suppliers. And the result of this choice is that we can have a more diversified purchase of gas, but also the origin of gas is less trackable. So we are kind of unable to understand where this gas comes from. Here you can see how currently the capacity of LNG is distributed per European country. So Italy, Germany, and the Netherlands are kind of in a medium point capacity, while the countries with the highest capacity of liquefied natural gas are Spain, France, and United Kingdom, which is here included for geographical reason, not political one, of course. And this is the situation in Europe concerning LNG terminals in 2022. So we can see in gray the already operating LNG terminals and how the decision of building new ones is going to change. Especially we can see that for Germany, Greece, and Italy, which were countries that had like a medium capacity concerning LNG, they plan to invest a lot in the construction of LNG terminals. And I think it's relevant, especially if we consider that climate change is, we are demanded to actively fighting climate change, and while we still rely on policies that relies on fossil fuels. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Celeste. And I've worked with that data in the past, so I know it's not very easy to set it up. So you did a great job, I think, in cleaning up the data source and visualizing it. Thank you. Okay, so following the order, I now have Chiara Migliori to present.
Hi, still here, even though it looks like I'm disappearing against the background. I'm still here. So let me share my screen.
I think it's the shirt with the stripes that makes it very
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's probably, that's the issue. So hi, everyone. Thanks for having me and giving me the chance to present today at this closing ceremony. My name is Chiara Migliori. I am a researcher in contemporary history, sociology, especially with a focus on religion and politics at the University of Bergamo. And this course was my very first step into this vast, unknown, but very fascinating world of data analysis, because so far I have always worked with qualitative type of data, gathered through interviews and text analysis and stuff like that. So my project is kind of, I mean, quite simple compared to the other ones that have been presented so far, but nevertheless, I'm also proud of my accomplishment, as this was the first time I did something like that. So let me just skip these introductory slides and talk about the data. So for this course, I worked on a database that I retrieved from the website of the European Data Journalism Network. And this database gathered data on 18 different European countries and more than 30 major European cities such as Prague, Stockholm, Milan, Turin, and many other cities. And for each city, the database gave us information on what we can call urban objects, such as streets, passages, squares, bridges. And for all these urban objects, I will refer only to streets to simplify the discourse from now on. So for all these streets, we had information on whether the street has been dedicated to a male or a female figure, and whether these figures are historical figures, so they have existed at some point in the past, or they were literary figures, biblical figures, all sorts of religious figures whose existence is up for debate, but is not the point of this presentation. And so the first data I gathered from this, from the analysis of this database, is that kind of unsurprisingly, in Europe, 5,628 streets have been dedicated to female figures against more than 55,000 streets dedicated to male figures, which makes more sense in percentage terms. So we have 9.26 streets dedicated to female figures against almost 91% of streets dedicated to male figures. Of course, if we take into account these 18 European countries. Italy is slightly, well, not really slightly, it's like 3 percentage points below the European average, because we have 6.68% of streets dedicated to female figures, either historical or literary/biblical figures, and 93% of streets dedicated to male figures. And so here is the first chart that I created with Data Wrapper. Again, this was my first attempt at doing something like this. So the chart is kind of self-explanatory, because we can see that there is a staggering 90.74% of male names on street signs in Europe against 9.26% of streets assigned to female figures. And then I asked myself, okay, but which are the countries that have the largest and the narrowest gender gap? if we can call it like that. And it turns out that Czech Republic has the largest gender gap, because we have 95.22% of streets assigned to male figures, and 4.78% of streets which have been dedicated to female figures, whereas Sweden has the narrowest gender gap, which is actually, if we look at the chart on the right, it's still kind of a considerable gender gap, but very much the data are very much different from the European average, because we have 80% of streets dedicated to male figures and 19 to female figures. And one question I asked myself, because I'm actually still working on this database, I'm enrolled in a data analysis course at the moment. So one question I asked myself is it possible that Czech Republic has so few female named streets because it is one of the least religious countries in the world? And so maybe this can be the reason for this gender gap, because there are fewer streets dedicated to female biblical or religious figures, or saints, or streets dedicated to the Virgin Mary and stuff like that. But then I went back to the Italian case, and Italy is a very religious country, and our percentage of streets dedicated to female figures is only 2 percentage points above the Czech one. So we have 6.68% of female named street, and Czech Republic has 4.78%. So I immediately discarded this hypothesis, and actually working further on this database, it turns out that it's more a geographical question. So lots of countries, like the countries with the largest gender gap, so with fewer female named streets, are in Eastern Europe, whereas the ones with more female named streets, so with the narrowest gender gap, are in Western Europe. But yeah, I didn't have time to learn how to create a European map. But this is my next goal for sure, because all the geographical maps that I've seen so far are very interesting and very useful for this kind of analysis. So yeah, thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Chiara. And I agree that the religious question is something that always pops up, and I'm sure in some way there must be a correlation, maybe not this one, but you know, I'm sure religion might have an impact in some way on street names. Perhaps we just need a bigger data set to figure it out. But yeah, thank you. So thank you again. And I would move to our seventh speaker, Marta Pereira. So I leave the floor to you.
Hi, everyone.
So
Let me try to... Is it working? Can everyone see?
yes, perfect.
Okay. So hi, everyone. Thanks again, Dataninja, for inviting me to be here today. For my project, I decided to do a research on the impact of Airbnb in Lisbon. But before talking more about that, about me, I'm currently a media analyst in a company here in Lisbon. And from my background, I did a bachelor's in journalism. And then last year, I graduated with a master's in race, media, and social justice. So I think my main interest when joining this program was to try to understand how I can use data with my work, and to try to improve my work with data. When it comes to the data pitch, my main question was to understand what can data tell us about the impact of Airbnb in the city of Lisbon. For context, in 2023, Lisbon witnessed its biggest housing crisis demonstrations in decades. And the latest census data revealed that the city center had lost more than 20% of its residents and 15% of family households between 2011 and 2021. And at the same time, we could see that short-term accommodations like Airbnb continue to grow. So my main aim with this project was to present a detailed picture of the density of Airbnb accommodations in Lisbon, and now that can correlate to the decline of both the resident population and the family households in the city center. When it comes to the data that I used two data sets. First of all, I used the main government data institute here in Portugal, and I took data from the city of Lisbon that pertain to things like private households, family households, resident population, and then percentage change of both family households and resident population in the last years. And then I decided to combine this data with data from the Inside Airbnb, and I aim to look at Airbnb listings that were active in the last 12 months, available for more than 30 days of the year. So looking at variables like neighborhoods, number of reviews in the last 12 months, minimum nights, and prices. So from this, when looking at only Inside Airbnb, I could conclude that in the last year, 10,971 Airbnbs were active in the city of Lisbon. And from that, with only 4,174 single hosts. So looking at this data from Inside Airbnb, we can see that the Lisbon neighborhoods with the highest percentage of Airbnb listings were Santa Maria Maior, Misericórdia, and Arroios, which are the city center neighborhoods in Lisbon. And we can see that these neighborhoods would make up almost 50% of all Airbnbs in the city. Again, as I said, when looking at the census data, we could see that both Santa Maria Maior and Misericórdia lost over 20% of their resident population and family households from 2011 and 2021. So my main goal was to understand how I could combine these two data and actually understand the density of Airbnbs in the city of Lisbon. And from that, I concluded that when looking at households, we could see that for every 1,000 households in Lisbon, there were 3.4 Airbnb listings. And if we look closer at the city center, we can see that this number would jump all the way to 24. And then if we look at resident population, we could see that Lisbon had a density of 20 Airbnb listings per 1,000 residents. But looking again at the city center, we could see that this number would jump all the way to 206.9 listings per 1,000 residents. So my main interest was to understand how could I visualize this with a map of the city. So when it comes to the first data visualization and looking at the census data that would tell us about the decrease of resident population, we can see in this map how it looks in each neighborhood in Lisbon. And we can see that half of Lisbon neighborhood saw a decline in population between 2011 and 2021. And we can also see how much bigger this decrease is in the city center, both in Santa Maria Maior and Misericórdia. And now these two areas are much darker than any other when we are looking at the decrease. Again, then combining it with the data from Inside Airbnb, then we can also look and combining it with the family households, we can then again see how the city center is again much more impacted when looking at the Airbnbs and the number of Airbnbs in the city center. So again, for every 1,100 households in Lisbon, there are 3.4 Airbnb listings. But then looking at the city center, we can see that this number jumps to 24.6, and then we can see again how this area is much darker than any other area in the city center in the city of Lisbon. So I feel like at the end of looking at the data, I was able to understand how much the city center is impacted by Airbnbs, and I could visualize it against all the other neighborhoods in the city that are not impacted by it. And I guess that's the main thing that I did. At the end, I actually did a Zine featuring additional data. I don't think I have time to show it, But
Well, you can show it because I mean, I didn't know the tool and I thought it was awesome. So I think everybody will
okay,
appreciate it as well.
okay. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to. Do you see it, or is it?
No, it's not being shown now.
I think when I started I think I have to
Yeah,
because
maybe
I only
yeah, you have
wait.
to
Let me
share.
yeah. Let me try to do it again. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Maybe, yeah. But basically, I just did it with more of the graphs that I did, and the main conclusions that I had, and it's just decided to do a little design with all of the graphs that I did. So yeah, I'm not gonna spend much more time, but you can see that I also used like graphs like this, and then different maps, and also the hosts and tables like that. But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, I thought it was useful to show because you were able to embed the data wrapper charts. So this is
Oh yeah, you can see how then the interactive. You can see how each neighborhood. I also put the Airbnb listings and also resident population, and now that then concludes in the final number. And yeah, that's it.
No, I mean, meaning perhaps it's a tool also for other students if they want to. I mean, it's not mandatory for the data pitch, but if you want to continue working on your project, I think it's an interesting platform to publish things.
Yeah.
Because you can, all the work you have done on data wrapper, you can import it here. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Marta. Thank you. And so now we are with the last student presenting today, Beatrice Petrella. So I leave the floor to you.
Hi, everyone. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Okay, so here we are. So my data pitch is focused on enhancing struggles that characterizes Italy, and it is the geographic inequality in eating disorders treatment. Now, just before I start, a few things about me. I'm a freelance journalist and podcaster based in Italy. I wrote for Domani and L'Espresso and for Roma Today. My podcast about digital legacy came out last year on Storytel, and basically I write and talk about issues related to social justice and international politics. Now, coming to my pitch, this investigative project is focused on the availability and quality of treatment for eating disorders and the disparity between northern and southern Italy. Now, in Italy, we have an increasing number of eating disorders, and there is a concerning trend. Now, patients that live in the southern part of the country have significant barriers accessing adequate care compared to the others living in the northern part. Now, this project aims to underline those differences and spur action towards a more equitable health system in my country. Now, about the data that I took for my project were gathered by the Italian Ministry of Health. Specifically, I analyzed the epidemic data, the map of treatment centers, and then the increase in eating disorders across Italy that was measured by the National Ministry of Health survey that took place between 2019 and 2023. So the thing that I wanted to underline is that talking with one of the doctors, Dr. Laura Della Ragione, that worked to create the survey, is the thing that there is a huge proportion of the data that were not represented because the criteria that the ministry decided to adopt were not comprehensive enough. So there is a huge proportion of people affected by eating disorders that are not represented, unfortunately. Now, the top insight that I gathered from my data is the fact that there was a huge increase in new cases of eating disorders between 2019 and 2022, especially due to the spread of COVID-19 pandemic. Now, another thing is that more than 50% of treatment centers are located in northern Italy, which, I mean, might not be an issue if you think that the majority of the population lives in the northern part of Italy. However, it is a problem if the latter part that we have in the southern part of the country is not enough for the people living there. Then in central Italy, we have the 22% of treatment centers and one of the excellent centers, which is Palazzo Francisci and is located in Umbria. Now, the regions with the highest number of treatment centers are Emilia-Romagna and Lombardia. And there is a region that actually doesn't have any treatment center. But we're going to see it in a second time. Now, here we can see the increase of new cases in eating disorder per year. Let's focus on 2019. Now we have 1,680 cases, which is an important number, but we see how they almost double in 2022. We have 1.5 million cases. And in 2020, I would like to focus on the overall care burden, which is the sum of new cases and cases in treatment. Became 2.3 million of patients, which is a very huge number. Especially if we consider what kind of country Italy is. Now, I would like to show you this map. Now, this map shows us how treatment centers are located, what are the regions that are best served, and the others that are not properly taken care of. Now, I would like to focus on Molise. Now, Molise is the only region in Italy that doesn't have any treatment center for eating disorders. Just to draw a parallel, Molise is the same region that doesn't have a gynecologist willing to perform an abortion, because the last one who was willing to do it became too old to keep on working in the public sector. Now, as a result, going back to eating disorders, patients are forced to leave their region to have inadequate care when it comes to eating disorders. And this is very problematic because it becomes extremely expensive for families and for people in general. So, yeah, here's the thing. The thing is that the centers are not distributed equally, and there is not a real fair direction on to change these things, because there is this idea that this other part of the country is underdeveloped and there is no willingness to change this situation. So this was my pitch, and thank you again for your time and for this important learning opportunity.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Super interesting, and I can't wait when they update with the new data as well, because you know, the COVID pandemic will have had an impact on the numbers. So it's nice to see also the long-term perspective. So thank you very much, Beatrice. And thank you all also for presenting, and all of you who are watching this presentation and graduation ceremony. The program isn't finished yet, meaning there are going to be more people graduating in July. And so we invite you to, we will send you information about that when that happens. And so, yes, so thank you everyone for participating. Thank you, Arnaldo, for being with us today and giving the introduction. We will update you when the recording is online so that you can watch it again. Thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Congratulations.